I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, and once again another special bonus episode. The Oscar Shortlist came out yesterday, so I decided to do a video breaking down my thoughts, essentially briefly going through a bunch of different movies, surprises, some snubs, and then finally giving my three main takeaways of what this means for the larger Oscar race: Best Picture, Best Director, that sort of stuff, as well as some of the more smaller categories. But don't fret, come Monday I will have the regularly scheduled Old's Oscar Countdown video as well, where I'll be giving some bold predictions and my best documentary predictions. So I've been talking about this all year. Once we get right now into the heat of things, the heart of things, we're going to get multiple videos a week like this one, these extra bonus episodes to give you analysis and thoughts on the upcoming Oscar race, because that's what I'm here for. So if you want to hear my main takeaways, skip ahead to further on in the video. There'll be just links in the description so you can jump around for the different chapters. But just briefly at the top for the first few minutes here, I just want to go through the snubs and the surprises. So starting off with the surprises, those would be essentially things that overperformed, a surprise in a good way. And then a snub would be more on the negative side. Why didn't this movie get nominated? Surprise that it didn't get nominated. So kind of a surprise is a good thing and snub is a bad thing. At least that's how I'm categorizing it here for this video. So to start things off, Amsterdam was a bit of a surprise, getting in for both song and makeup. That shows that I think that movie isn't totally dead and may get a little bit of buzz and potential nomination in a category like makeup. Let's not forget David O. Russell. 3 of his films have been nominated for Best Picture. He still has some appreciation within the Academy. Crimes of the Future, I thought that was a really fun nomination for makeup. Don't think it's going to get in, but I'm glad that it was recognized. J. Ralph for the voice of Dustin Ash. Now this is a little bit of an insider baseball one, but the voice of Dustin Ash was nominated for shortlisted for Best Original Song, and that's important because the composer and the songwriter of the song is J. Ralph, who is a sort of legendary Oscar nominee. He's only been nominated 3 times, but he pretty rarely works, and when he does work and he does put out a song, he actually gets nominated. As a matter of fact, if you look at the nominations he gets for his movies, they're oftentimes for these kind of activist, central, kind of related documentaries, and most of the time the documentaries aren't even shortlisted themselves. They're not very well heard of, but for some reason they really like the song. So I mean, movies like Jim, the James Foley Story, or Racing Extinction, or Chasing Ice, he gets nominated for the songs of these movies. Even if the documentary doesn't get nominated for Best Documentary, he has a lot of respect within the industry. So don't be surprised if come Oscar night, nominations night, you hear, J. Ralph for the voice of Dustin Ash to get nominated, and you're going to go, who is that? You'll know because you're listening to this channel. J. Ralph, watch out for him. He could be a potential nominee. It's not a coincidence that it's him and Diane Warren, 2 legendary sort of songwriters in the Oscars, and then a bunch of celebrities. That's not a coincidence that this movie that very few people have even heard of still got the nomination because of someone like J. Ralph. Nope was another movie that got in for score and visual effects, but didn't get shortlisted for Best Sound, so it's a movie that's complicated for me to understand. I don't think it's ultimately going to get any nominations come Oscar night, but it was surprising that he got in for score, and visual effects was kind of expected, but score I thought was a little bit of a surprise to get in, which I'm glad. Michael Abels is one of the most exciting young composers working today. But then also not getting in for Best Sound was a little bit confusing, because if you've seen the film, it's very much got some great sound design and sound based in many regards. So it's still confusing as to how the Academy appreciates that movie or doesn't appreciate the movie. Ultimately, I think it's going to miss out on all nominations personally, which is maybe disappointing depending on your opinions of the film, but this is just my thoughts and analysis of the race, opinions regardless. And then my final surprise I want to talk about is Blonde getting in for a Best Makeup shortlist. Last week, and this Monday really now, this episode, I talked about the best costume design in part, and I talked about how Blonde was a possible contender for me, just because I feel like this is a movie that's going to stay around, that may get and surprise with a couple of technical nominations. So its nomination here for Best Makeup and Hairstyling shows me that people are watching the movie, that people are considering the technical craft of the movie, and when we get to some of these technical categories like makeup, like costume design, the quality of the film doesn't necessarily always matter. I mean, look at 2016 Suicide Squad won for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, even though the movie was critically reviled. So I think Blonde may have a little bit of appreciation on that regard in a movie that's still being seen by a lot of people and may get some appreciation on the technical side. So it could even get in for makeup as well. Watch out for that category. Now for some snubs. The first big one I thought was The Batman not getting shortlisted for Best Original Score. The Batman, I think, is only going to ultimately get a couple of nominations. I don't think this really changes its overall, opinion, because it still got in for sound, which I didn't think it totally would get in, but ultimately I think it's going to get a nomination for visual effects and makeup and hairstyling. But for me, it was just a little personal disappointment, because I think Giacchino, this is maybe his best score, one of the best scores, definitely the best score of the year in my opinion. So definitely disappointing to see it, not even get shortlisted. Another big snub was Goodnight Oppie for best documentary. The documentary branch is always weird every year. They don't nominate the sort of more popular kind of movies, and I thought maybe Goodnight Oppie could have been a My Octopus Teacher-esque kind of positive, feel-good documentary that succeeds even in potentially winning the documentary Oscar. So the fact that it didn't even get shortlisted was surprising. I know Amazon wasn't happy for that. No Everything Everywhere All at Once for makeup and visual effects. Now, it did get shortlisted for score and song, and sound, which I didn't think it actually would. But it was surprising that I didn't get it for makeup and visual effects. I'll be talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once later in the video for key takeaway. So for further thoughts, skip ahead to that. My next sort of snub was RRR. For a lot of people, they thought if it's going to get in for Best Picture, it needs to get in some of these technical categories, like potentially a score or a sound or visual effects. So the fact that it didn't even get shortlisted for any of those categories definitely underperformed here. Once again, I'll be talking about RRR in the main takeaway section, because that's a big takeaway for sure. Another small takeaway would, in terms of the snubs category, would be No 13 Lives. 13 Lives did get shortlisted for Best Visual Effects, which was surprising for me, but did not get shortlisted for Best Sound. Now, I actually had 13 Lives as a possible contender in my Best Sound video, so that's, kaput. But it was surprising to me that, it does get a little bit of recognition for visual effects, but none for sound. So maybe we see a surprise nomination for 13 Lives there. But I think it's disappointing feature in not getting for Best Sound. I think probably knocks it out of any nomination race. No Taylor Swift for our music video / short film All Too Well. Taylor Swift has been sort of secretly campaigning pretty hard, trying to make almost a transition into film director, pop star turned film director. She announced that she is making her feature film directorial debut, and she did the Variety Directors on Directors series. So she was clearly pushing for it, I think, at the very least, to get some sort of a nomination here. So the fact that it was even shortlisted, not a good sign for her sort of early film directorial campaign. No Turning Red for a Best Original Song. What that tells me is that, I thought even though Billie Eilish and a good song was out in a popular movie, the Best Animated Feature race is really Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio's To Lose. That film pretty much should easily win for Best Animated Feature, and the fact that Turning Red didn't even get shortlisted for song shows just, I think, less support for that film. I still think it's going to get nominated, but that was really the main contender in anime feature. It was Turning Red or Pinocchio, but the fact that Turning Red didn't even get a song shortlist actually tells us a lot about the animated feature category, and I think that Pinocchio should easily win that one at this point. No Senior for documentary. This is the Robert Downey Jr. movie about his father, Robert Downey Sr. A bit of a personal favorite of mine, so disappointed that it just didn't get in, but it really tells us that Netflix is really going to be campaigning for their one documentary, Descendant, which was the one that got shortlisted, so they're really going to be campaigning hard for that one. And then my final snub I wanted to talk about was no Ben Proudfoot for the Best Chef in the World. Now, this is actually in the documentary short category, so once again another very insider baseball one, but Ben Proudfoot won for The Queen of Basketball just this past year. The year before that, he was nominated for A Concerto as a Conversation. So, this is a multiple-time nominee, past winner. He has two, actually, documentary shorts, but the more popular one was Best Chef in the World, and I actually thought that would potentially even get a nomination for Best Documentary Short at the Oscars. So the fact that it didn't even get shortlisted here was a little bit surprising. So Ben Proudfoot for Best Chef in the World not getting in, a bit of a snub, so we want to adjust our rankings accordingly for that category. But now jumping into the three main takeaways of this video. These are sort of the big three things that I think, based on the shortlist, based on all the different categories combined together, how will this affect the larger Oscar race, Best Picture, things like that. And the first main takeaway, I think, is the obvious one, which is All Quiet on the Western Front is a serious contender. We shouldn't ignore the film anymore. Now, am I saying it's 100% guaranteed for picture or some of these categories? No, I'm definitely not. But what I am saying is All Quiet on the Western Front is in my 10th slot right now for Best Picture. I think that clearly getting, shortlisted for 5 categories was an impressive feat. It shows that a lot of people have been seeing the movie. A lot of people are respecting the movie in all the different crafts, which is what that movie kind of needs. It's not an acting kind of a movie. It's very much a sort of technical mastery, appreciation a movie. Think of like a Dunkirk in 1917. Those would be sort of the most similar comparisons. And now it was going to get shortlisted in a category like Best Sound. I thought it was very obvious, but the fact that it got in for something like Best Score, that was surprising. Or even Best Makeup and Hairstyling, I think was a surprise too. So it shows, in general, more support for the film. And hey, I think if you want to get frisky with it, you could even say, Edward Berger could get in for Best Director, sort of filling in that surprise international feature slot that we get every year, because he does have clearly a lot of technical appreciation. It's really All Quiet on the Western Front, Babylon, and Avatar being the main technical movies, along with something like an Elvis as the main sort of technical movies getting nominated. So watch out for All Quiet on the Western Front. I had it in for sound, so good sign for me. I had it as a possible contender for Best Production Design. Maybe this pushes it over the edge to get in. No guarantees, but I do have it in my 10th slot right now, All Quiet on the Western Front. I do think that international members of the Academy will appreciate this movie. Then my second main takeaway is that Everything Everywhere All at Once disappoints a bit in the technical categories, but that doesn't mean it won't win Best Picture. I think we have to recognize that Everything Everywhere All at Once definitely did sort of disappoint today. It got nominated Critics' Choice for both visual effects and makeup, and yet didn't make the shortlist for either of those 2 categories here at the Oscars. So of course, what does that tell us? The Critics' Choice aren't the Oscars. They're going to do their own thing. They're not the Academy. We can't always sort of blindly follow the Critics' Choice. I knew that Everything Everywhere All at Once sort of overperformed at the Critics' Choice, and I said in past videos, I didn't think it would sort of repeat once again at the Oscars. Not even getting in the shortlist here definitely hurts the film. That being said, it still didn't do poorly. It still got shortlisted and surprised in my mind for something like Score or something like Sound. I didn't think it would get in for those shortlists, but it did. Now, it's not to say those categories are going to get nominated, but frankly, what it does say is that ultimately, the big sort of budget movies for visual effects and makeup and things like that, those are the movies that get well appreciated, not the sort of independent movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Maybe disappointing, because I do think there's a lot of inventiveness within the film, but the truth of the matter is that those big visual effects kind of movies and big budget movies are the ones that get appreciated. But what I don't want people to take away from is to think that, Everything Everywhere All at Once won't win Best Picture now. It disappointed here. It didn't perform. Guys, let's not forget, last year, Coda won Best Picture with having really no technical nominations. It had a potential possibility in song. It didn't even get that. You can go back to Moonlight in 2016 or Spotlight in 2015. You have these movies that don't have any real technical support, and yet they still get in for Best Picture. So let's not pretend that, Everything Everywhere All at Once, it didn't get in these shortlists, therefore it's waning in popularity, therefore won't win Best Picture. At the end of the day, take a movie like last year with Coda. That was a movie that peaked at the right time. Enough people saw it. I think if we did the nominations in March instead of, January, Coda would have got a lot of nominations, because a lot of people eventually caught up to that movie and saw it. And then when they did see it, they really liked it, which is why it won Best Picture. So Everything Everywhere All at Once, it still has a chance for Best Picture. I still think it's a major contender. Even if it doesn't get these technical nominations, it can still be an above-the-line, appreciative, Ki Kwan or Jamie Lee Curtis win, screenplay win, picture win. Very possible, has a clear path right now, I think, to the Best Picture. And right now, it's in my sort of number 1, number 2 slot. It's still a major contender despite these results. And then my third main takeaway is that RRR is not getting nominated for Best Picture. It may not even get nominated for any Oscars. I mean, right now I only have it nominated for 1 Oscar. Let's be honest with ourselves. I know a lot of us are big fans of RRR and comment and are active. And that happens every year where people get really passionate about a movie. I know I do, and I want to win. But ultimately, we have to be adults here. Are we really thinking that RRR is going to get nominated for Best Picture or Best Director when it's only going to get really 1 other nomination? Because it wasn't the India selection for International Feature, it won't be nominated for Best International Feature, even though it probably would have been. But it's not going to, because it wasn't India's selection. So it's not going to get nominated there. Right now, it's only sort of solid chance, I think, is for the song Not To. But if you've seen the film, you nominate Not To, because you appreciate it within the story. But if you haven't seen RRR, is there a chance that you'll nominate it for Best Song? Maybe not. I mean, the big possibility for RRR getting a picture nomination was, oh, it's not going to be an above-the-line nomination. It's going to get these technical awards. What about score, Connor? What about visual effects? What about sound? You didn't have in those categories. I didn't have in those categories because I wasn't totally positive in his chances, and the fact that I didn't get shortlisted here, it just means that the obvious. The Academy voters aren't seeing the film, or they don't like the film enough that maybe the general public does. So we have to react and adapt to that. So if you have it in your Best Picture or even Best Director predictions, you have to say, do I really think it's going to get in for Best Picture and Best Original Song, and that's it? Because that's really its possibilities. Very rare it's going to get, in my opinion, costume design or production design or screenplay. It's not going to get an original screenplay. So is that going to really happen? That would be very surprising if it gets in for Picture and Original Song. We've never seen that happen, let alone say Picture, Director, Original Song. At the end of the day, you have to be realistic with yourself. And you have to go, not enough people have been seeing RRR, or they clearly don't like the movie because it didn't make the short list. So therefore, its chances at getting Picture or Director are definitely slim at this point. Even though it does have that sort of crowd-pleasing feature, I know a lot of people like it. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be real. It's not going to get nominated most likely for Best Picture. It only will get nominated for Best Original Song. If that, it may not get nominated for any Oscars whatsoever. It may be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, but its shortlist disappointments here were resounding and definite sign that this is not as strong as a movie as we think. But that's been it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on some of my main takeaways and your sort of big snub or surprise, personal, overall Oscar race, whatever you want. I'd love to hear that in the comments down below. Stay tuned this week on Monday. I'm going to be giving my thoughts and reactions to the Best Documentary Predictions category. We're also getting 7 bold predictions. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.